Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another new edition of To The Point. And tonight we're going to shed light on Egypt's foreign policy objectives, and we will shed light also on the Bulgarian Prime Minister's visit to Egypt for a two-day visit that was concluded today. And on this issue, we're glad to be joined here at the studio by Dr. Huda Awad, Professor of Political Science, and Dr. Cherif Amir, Professor of International Relations. Thank you very much for joining us today, and it's a very good chance to have you with us today. It's our pleasure always. And we're going to start, of course, with the Bulgarian Prime Minister visit today for a two-day visit to Egypt that was concluded today, and the press conference that took place between President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and the Bulgarian Prime Minister. Dr. Cherif, how do you see the significance of this visit?
Well, it seems that now several countries in this region are settling their priorities in this difficult time. We have seen that what took place in Syria, it was really something that made everyone exhausted. And now that things are calming down, many countries are trying to see whether they can establish new order in this region. And I think that there are several similarities between Egypt and Bulgaria. First of all, both of us are now trying to find a new economic overture, new economic opportunities amidst all these difficulties. Both of us are starting to have, although they are part of the European Union, but both of us are trying to establish good relations with the European Union and the main powers there. We are both development countries in a way or another, because we have suffered many difficult problems in the past, whether they were in the communist regime, and we were at a certain time, we suffered from what happened in 2011 with the Arab Spring and all the wars and the terrorism. So I think that both leaders, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and the Prime Minister of Bulgaria, they have many things to exchange. Let's say one of them, and this is very, very interesting, is that Bulgaria is a member of NATO. And it means that they have a very close relationship with the United States of America. At the same time, the Prime Minister of Bulgaria has excellent relations with the Russian leader Vladimir Putin, and he was in Moscow, just as we have the same relations with both powers, Moscow and Washington. Right. So I think that that means that there is this kind of similarity, that we are not biased to any of the forces. We are trying to have each in its region a way of dialogue and cooperation militarily and economically with all the forces. And that's a good chance. It's another point that President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has made it today, as we have concluded or started the relationship with Africa, which was neglected. We started it with Asia, it was neglected, and now with the Balkans and Balkan states, it was neglected. So I think that this is a new approach in the international relations for Egypt.
Right. The Bulgarian Prime Minister Boyko Borisov left Cairo a short while ago, and during the press conference held earlier, the Prime Minister stressed the strong historic and cultural relations with Egypt. Dr. Huda, how do you see the importance of the timing of this visit?
That's an interesting point, I mean, of the timing. First of all, I mean, this is the second visit, by the way. I mean, a second visit to another country that's in the Balkan, and also Kazakhstan. It was preceded by Kazakhstan. So the very idea that you want to have relations with Central Asia or Asia Minor, that's a very new approach, by the way, from on the side of the Egyptian foreign policy. And I think the timing as well is that you're trying to broaden your spectrum. That, of course, you have the two great powers, Russia and U.S. That you are having good relations with, but also you are widening your spectrum here, economically, relationships, because one thing that you keep remembering about Bulgaria, that it really supported Egypt before in the EU, particularly because they understand the challenges that face Egypt at a certain point of time during the Muslim Brother rule, and then with the revolution 2011, and that's why they say they faced or were exposed to the very same challenges also and difficulties joining the EU.
Definitely.
So I mean, here you have, I mean, I think Doctor also referred to that there are similarities, but the most important thing actually and interesting is the fields of cooperation that you have already mentioned or talked about, and this is
economic
what we need
and trade cooperation, of course.
Exactly, economic and trade, and this is again related to the vision here, the economic vision, how to widen your market. By the way, the market, it's a market as well.
Definitely. Dr. Cherif, the two sides agreed to establish a joint committee, including all ministers, and it will convene next year in Sofia. So how do you see the significance and the benefits of this new committee?
Well, first of all, there is another point which is very important for both countries, that we are leading countries in tourism.
Definitely.
In Bulgaria and Egypt. And we had maybe a common historical competitor, which is Turkey, and now it has its decline. So I think that both of us, we could exchange the tourism industry, exchange all the expertise and even the tourists. We in the Red Sea, we have this category for the Russian and Bulgarian and other countries who are welcome to Egypt at any time. So I think that that's very important for us to open a new ways for the Bulgarians to come to Egypt. The exchange of ministerial relations is very important in the fact that there is always expertise to be exchanged. And I think when I talked about the relations between the tourism industry, I cannot forget also the relations that could be established between the two security apparatus, between our internal security and the internal security of Bulgaria. Bulgaria suffered from many infiltrations from terrorist groups at certain time who wanted to cross to Turkey. The jihadists who crossed the borders to go there to Syria, to Turkey and then Syria. We have the expertise in combating terrorism in this. And there is another point that is very important for us as Egyptians, and we have done a good job in it towards the EU, and the Bulgarians did the same thing. They had more difficulties than us. It's the illegal immigration.
Definitely.
Yeah, we have seen the media at a certain time, the hundreds and thousands of Syrian refugees crossing the borders until they went to Serbia, Montenegro, they went to Romania, and then the Polish government refused to receive them. Hungary, Prime Minister Orban didn't accept the fact that they could stay there. So the Balkan states and Central Europe had its burden in it. So I think that we have done the same thing in preventing illegal immigration starting from Libya and also from Sinai, as the terrorist groups were concentrated there. So I think we will exchange a relationship in this. The war and terror, I always said, the fact that Egypt had, unfortunately, the burden to fight terrorism, but we will say one day, fortunately, because we will have afterwards the expertise. It's unusual war, It's not very simple task to handle. So I think that we will exchange with the Bulgarians this also.
Right. With regards to what Dr. Cherif have just said, the two countries have common solutions to cross-border crimes, illegal immigration, and of course terrorism. Dr. Huda, do you think the world has to unite, to join forces together to fight all these issues, specifically fighting terrorism?
It goes without saying. They must, of course, unite because it is an international threat, I would say. Well, it differs, I mean, the names of these threats or the names of the terrorists, but it is the same threat to the national integrity, the national security as well. So it's very important to cooperate. And if it could be mutual cooperation, why not? Despite the fact, really, what could wonder about it is that, yes, we have could be historical relations, and it can way back to the Ottoman Empire, actually, because it's the Balkan, of course.
Yeah.
But interesting that it's the Black Sea and we have the Red Sea, and this is how really to relate to each other. Despite we have just we spoke about routes, and now there are many routes for connections and trade routes and even extending the pipelines and gas and so on. So it's, again, as you said, I mean, I agree with you that, well, the world has become a small village, really. It's it's what we call globalization.
Global village.
It's a global village, or there is globalization, but it's also local. There are local interests as well. So how to combine both?
Right, and still with the terrorism, Dr. Cherif, why is it very difficult to achieve this far-fetched dream of joining forces together of different countries around the world to fight terrorism?
Well, because we have seen their conflicting interests between many superpowers, and especially in the Middle East. We have seen, for example, the problem, the last enclave of terrorism, Idlib. It cannot be settled because the Americans are not, don't want this to see the forces of Bashar al-Assad liberating these parts. They don't want to give credit to the Russians, but still, who are there in Idlib? Still, they are the factions supported by Turkey, and they are Jaish al-Nusra and other terrorist factions there. So I think that there are conflicting interests in this region. This is why everything was going wrong in a certain time. Unfortunately, when we had the concentration of terrorist groups in Sinai, we all know that there was some intelligence services, foreign services, and even Arab services like Qatar supporting them. So everyone was combating each country, and it was a mess, a real mess. And as President Vladimir Putin said it years ago in the United Nations once, he said, "Do you realize what you have done? It's a disaster." I think that now when things will settle and will calm down, it will take some time to reconstruct.
How much time?
It depends on the will of the leaders, and the will of those who take the decisions. And I think that what started the war in Syria, for example, and destroyed all what took place as economic development, I think it was the gas fields and all that. And I think the superpowers now, the Russians, the Americans, and we as Egyptians talking with our Cypriot friends, I think that when all this map will be reorganized again, things will settle, and the economic interests will be, we will witness a new Sykes-Picot, a new way of administrating the Middle East.
We're looking forward to this, of course.
Well, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt here.
Definitely.
Not necessarily, because this is the question that should bother everyone, is that what what we're going to happen, how it's going to look like after the aftermath. Aftermath in Syria and what's taking place even in Libya as well as in Yemen,
Iraq,
in Iraq already. Yes, you're right. So actually, this, well, the reorganization or the, I would say, to redesign the whole thing, to work for whose interest. Actually, we understand now it's the language of power. And that's why maybe the more you have connections and the more you have this kind of solid kind of relations and backing, the better. Now, not to stand alone. With Syria, I think it will not be the case that ended by freeing Syria from Daesh or Idlib from Daesh, because, well, you have to look at what's going to happen after this. Who's going to really be in the region? Who's going to be the real decision maker? Are the senior Bashar al-Assad or the other parties that
the new
have,
map.
Of course, a new map, I would say, even a new map, thank you, it's a new map. So actually we have to be, really, we have to have a vision, what's to our own actually country and to the region itself.
And to what extent the development process that we're passing through will help in fighting extremism and terrorism in Egypt?
Well, we are, Egypt has a special way to deal with all that, because we have the ideological war also. It's not a war of weapons, lethal war. No, we have to fight ideologically in a way to show that Egypt, once again, is the land of all the cultures and religions as it was before. We were the shining star of this part of the Middle East culturally and in religious diversity. I think that Egypt's role will be like that. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said it when he became president. He said, God created us different, and our role is to accept this difference. And that one day Egypt, who exported civilization to the world, would regain its role again. That this is our destiny. We cannot change it. We have to bear this role. When Egypt at a certain time was affected by terrorism, look what happened in the whole region. I think that when we will go through the process of economic development, but also ideological reform in the minds of the young people, I think things will change. We will have a new era of culture vision for the young generation. But still, as doctors just said, we had it's the force, the power. That's why we had the priority of reconstructing our military, having new weapons to defend our sovereignty, because we have seen that we are in a nasty neighborhood. They could do anything to achieve their interests at any time. We were stabbed in the back by many friends at a certain time, and we had to reconstruct our relations with Washington and Brussels. We had only at a certain time maybe the Russians who are kind in accepting our vision, but let's not remember in the revolution of 2013, we had all the Western world against us. So I think that Egypt's burden now is to prove that peace and civilization is the way. We have no other way to choose.
Right. In the joint press conference held earlier today, the Bulgarian Prime Minister stressed that Egypt is a key player in the region. What does this signify and reflect?
Oh, definitely. Always. Egypt is a key player. And, you know, it's the gate door also to all the Middle East. You have to have your hand on Egypt so that if you want to really have a wide relationship in the Middle East, in all the Middle East. So, of course, that's why countries now are keen to have relationship with Egypt. See, before China also wanted to help in the Suez Canal, because Egypt is a key, as you say, player and as a strategic location. So I guess it goes without saying that Egypt now has this kind of an asset to cooperate with countries in different geographical areas, by the way. As I said, again, we said earlier, it's becoming one small village. So we are very much connected, and this is through technology and high tech. And I think this is what we need now, particularly in education. And I think are the two important fields that actually they're working.
These two fields were stressed today at the press conference,
yes,
cooperation in the field of technology and education.
So that's why you need the technology and the high tech, and you need experts, and you need to train the youth here for high tech devices.
Right. Dr. Cherif, President Sisi keeps opening connection channels with Europe. In your opinion, how does this enhance opportunities of partnership contracts with European countries?
Well, the more you have economic interests, common economic interests with other countries, the more you have an immunity system of against any intervention. Look, for example, many countries who were isolated at a certain time, they were vulnerable. They couldn't resist at any time. We have seen the last example was Turkey. They had the standoff with the United States of America. They had the sanctions, and what they have done at the end, they gave up, and they released the pastor again after they said we will do everything to preserve our sovereignty, because being disconnected from the outside world is very dangerous. And it's very, very important also. It's this difficult task for all leaders in this current time to have this open doors policy, and at the same time preserve your sovereignty and preserve your decision-making policy. And I think that we have now in Egypt the experience to deal with this. We have bilateral relations with the Russians and with the Americans and with the Europeans. And I think that we are giving signals to all parties that we are open to the investment. We have the new Suez Canal. We have offered opportunities for the Chinese to work in the Middle East as they're working now in Africa, to work and have established their economic projects in Egypt. So I think we are giving very different signals to all the countries about the opportunities. But still, that's what's very important, that we have a strong army now. So the openness doesn't mean that we will be vulnerable. It's clear.
Right. Dr. Huda, in light of today's press conference, in your opinion, how does Egypt's positive foreign relations contribute in coordinating situations to Arab issues like the situation in Libya, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen?
Most important, actually, Palestine.
And Palestine,
This is the most important. I mean, let alone Syria, to be honest, let alone Syria and Libya. And what's taking place in Yemen, actually, it's a very devastating situation in Yemen. But the most important and challenging now is to solve the two-state solution here with the Palestinian, Israeli, and the kind of settlement and negotiations. And you need all the support, actually. It's not only that you have one big party, which is the United States, is helping, but you need the support of most of the countries of the world, actually the international community. And this is really one important thing in order to try to come to a conclusion or solution, concluding solution to the Palestinian issue.
Definitely. Dr. Cherif, President Sisi also praised the importance of the role played by the Egyptian diplomacy in defense of Egypt's interests abroad. How do you see the significance of the role played by the Egyptian diplomacy worldwide?
Well, we talked a few weeks ago about the visit of Foreign Minister Samah Shukri to Japan.
Yes.
And I think that Mr. Shukri is a very active foreign minister. He's not sparing any effort to translate Egypt's vision to other countries because unfortunately the media outside Egypt at a certain time were always criticizing Egypt because it didn't go along what was prepared for the whole Middle East, the new Middle East. We have changed the rules, yes, but we changed it because the people wanted this change. So I think that we gave the message. He's giving the message. I think that, look, for instance, in Ethiopia, the barrage, the dam, Renaissance Dam, we have done a great job of preventing disastrous consequences that could have taken place at a certain time. Maybe we didn't achieve right now a final solution for it, but still we are slowing down the process, and slowing out this process is very, very good because they got the investment, they got the financing from different countries, and they were all aiming to weaken Egypt. We have done a great job concerning Libya. We have told the world that General Khalifa Haftar has to be listened to because he's the guy who is leading the national army there. Now he's received in Paris. When I was in France before, they used to say that this guy is unwanted, we don't want to see him. And the fact that now Emmanuel Macron receives him at the Élysée, this is because of our effort.
The role played by Egypt.
Of course, this is what Egypt has done. And let's see now what's taking place even in Syria. We are telling all the factions who are peaceful factions, not those who had arms and killed other civilians there, to come to Egypt and to negotiate. We are open for this discussion. So I think that it goes without saying that we are taking a very clear track, is that we want to have peace in this region, but still we would not let any intervention in our foreign policy or internal affairs take place again.
Right. Dr. Buda, in your opinion, what are the most important political and development goals that Egypt and the Egyptian diplomats should work on to achieve?
Well, most important goal actually is to achieve sustainable development. And sustainable development, with the meaning of the word goes for all tracks. I mean, the economic, the security, the political stability. This is very important, and you cannot have any sustainable development or continuous development unless you have this kind of settlement, cooperation, mutual respect and understanding. This is a very important element, what I'm saying, and I guess these are the main tenets that the foreign policy in Egypt is working on, actually.
Right. Dr. Cherif, you've mentioned a very important point, which is tourism. And during today's press conference, the Bulgarian Prime Minister stressed that Egypt is a safe country, noting that Egypt will host the European Union conference early next year. What's the significance of this statement, and how does it read worldwide?
Well, it's very intelligent because, as I said, both countries have a leading role in the tourism industry, and I think that we were weak in both countries at a certain time, and I think that we are trying to regain again our position So the similarity here, that I think that we are giving mutual encouragement to each other. And when the Prime Minister gives this statement, of course, he's not obliged to do it because he could say that his country is the country was safe for tourism, but saying that about another country that could be a competitor at one time, but saying that, that means that he aims to make a new kind of collaboration, economic collaboration in this field. And I think that, you know, the Prime Minister of Bulgaria is very popular. So the fact that he's the one who is giving this statement, it's very, very important because the people are listening to him. He's not anyone. So I think that we have the good relationship with the right man at the right timing.
Right. Well, in light of the current situation in the region, how do you define and describe Egypt-U.S. relations, Dr. Hoda?
Well, just let me add something before we go on to this U.S.-Egypt relations about tourism. Actually, I did work on this in this field about tourism, and we have recommendations. And I hope these recommendations can work now, that Egypt has to open new markets. This is very important, that we look outside the Western market. We always wanted the European. Now we are looking, and the Russian. Now we are looking to other countries, and including, by the way, Arab, African, as well as Asia Minor countries. This is very important, just as I wanted, and that is the time now. And I'm glad that this recommendation was during El-Biltagi, the Minister of Tourism, El-Biltagi, that was some time ago, and now I think, I hope this can be realized now. Now get to the U.S.
Well, in light of the current situation in the region, how do you define and describe Egypt-U.S. relations?
That's at the time being now, it's getting to understand that United States, or I would say the American administration, let me put it this way, and very formal, understand that Egypt is really a key player in the region, because they were trying to see other key players, and you understand that because they get money, the petrodollars as we call them, but now they realize that Egypt is the most important player and settled, stable player, and this is very important if they want to proceed with the rest of the countries in the region, that Egypt is a party in it, or it's a partner, it's a major partner. So I think now this U.S.-Egyptian relation is now based on understanding the role of Egypt. And this is what I mean here, because of the language of power. Yes, we are not that powerful, but we are very important as a key player. We know how to negotiate, we know how to deal with other Arab countries. We have this kind of experience that the U.S. needs, definitely.
Dr. Cherif, your take on that?
Well, let's say it's not about only the Arab countries and the petrodollar. We had the Americans tried other ally, which is Turkey, and they're deceived. They know that the guy is a gambler there, and there's a huge difference between President Erdogan and President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. The man who holds to his word, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and is fighting terrorism. We never blackmailed the West with anything. We never blackmailed them with the refugees. We never blackmailed them with terrorism. On the other hand, this was done by their own major ally in NATO, who has the largest army in NATO after the United States of America. So I think that now the equation is different in the Middle East. There is a real partner who would not stab them in the back, who would not say a word and do something else, but when that does not mean that we are surrendering our sovereignty. We have said several times that we have a clear vision to protect Egypt's interest. And we went through what we went through in 2013 after the revolution against the dictatorship of the Muslim Brotherhood. We had all the difficulties, but at the end we made it clear that this was the will of the people, and then we extended our hand to our partners. They are our partners, and all the countries are our partners. The problem now is that there are countries in some regions, and it's like Qatar and Turkey, who does not wish to see Egypt's position regained again. Well, this is the fact of history, and sooner or later, as we are seeing now, we are heading in the right track.
Right. Now, Egypt's foreign policy under President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, it takes the form of strategically calculated moves. So, in light of the current situation regionally and internationally, what does Egypt's foreign policy seek first and foremost?
Stability in the Middle East, stability in this region. Because we have seen it's like it's the house of cards. When it all started in Tunisia, there was miscalculations. Everyone said we are not like Tunisia. Well, we have seen that was very organized. The plan was was carried accurately. It was the same system in the media, the international media. And then we have seen the atrocities in Yemen, in Iraq, in Syria, and in Libya. So I think that now we have learned the lesson is that we are all in the same neighborhood, and this neighborhood needs to have a time of calm. And let's not forget that the fact that there is the Russian presence also in this region has changed a lot. Whether people or analysis, people in the research field does not really accept this equation. But let's say it has balanced things. Imagine if the Russians wouldn't have intervened in Syria. Syria would have been now several factions, and then things would have changed in the whole Middle East, and Egypt would have remained in the same problem. Things have changed, and I think that now there is a balance. I'm not really saying that everything will be very, very fine for all of us. We are combating terrorism. It's not finished yet, but at least Egypt's aim now is to show the world that we are a remaining force in this region. We went through fire, and still we are there.
Dr. Hoda, your take on that?
Well, I lost track, actually. Can you repeat the question?
Right. Now, we said that under President Sisi's regime, Egypt's foreign policy is taking the form of strategically calculated moves. So what does Egypt's foreign policy seek first and foremost?
Of course, no, the foreign policy seeks, most important thing is to have to get connections and relationship. These relationship helps in attaining development, and this is the most important thing. Actually, with stability, of course, we are stable. I mean, this is stability, it goes without saying. But the most important thing and the challenge we have is to have, I mean, with the old Sisi's visit and with the Minister of Sameh Shoukry, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry, is to seek this kind of connection for development, for economic development, technological development. This is very important to the country. Without development, actually, nobody would really want to even consider you in the first place.
Stability first. Without stability, you never can have development.
Of course, you have stability, sir. You do have stability. This is, you know, Egypt is the country. No, let me just finish with that. Egypt is a country that really was able to remain or to contain its territorial integrity. This is very important amidst of what's taking place. So we are, and that's why in the United States, as you told me about the relation, is that they recognized that Egypt really is the country that it still was able to maintain its stability.
I'm talking about the regional stability. We are all connected. Regional stability. What happens here happens there, and it's affecting us. What took place in Libya, we had to have our forces 24 hours a day watching the borders because they were aiming to destroy Egypt from the western part.
By the way,
so the stability in the region is the priority.
It's the penetration really still exists. I mean, nobody would say no to this, and that's why you need the cooperation of all countries. You cannot be stand alone. Even you try to stand alone and you maintain your, as I said, your integrity, but you still need the cooperation and development. This is the three main things. Development can maintain your stability. Without development, you cannot maintain. This is maybe the opposite. Without development, you cannot maintain your stability.
Definitely, definitely. The EU has provided significant support for Egypt in various fields. How do you see the future of Egypt-EU relations?
Well, we have shown a lot. We have shown that we are a nation which had a real plan of protecting its interest outside and inside Egypt. We have prevented the illegal immigration from Egypt. We have prevented the terrorist cells to be created here and go abroad. We have an excellent communication in the field of intelligence with our counterparts in Europe, and this was very important for them. Definitely. They used to work with the Israelis, for example, and now they work also with the Egyptian security establishment because they know we have a strong security establishment. They count on Egypt also in the peace of the eastern region of the Mediterranean. We are now heading in new projects with Cyprus, with Greece, and I think that we have shown the Europeans that this part of the Mediterranean is secure because what we are doing. We have excellent relations in the military field. We have the maneuvers of the Bright Star with our friends. It had with the Americans, with the
Russians.
The Russians was no, the Russians something different. We had the protectors of the friendship. This is the Russian military maneuvers. And then we had before the Bright Star was the Western Bloc was against Russia now. I mean the United States, Britain, France, Italy, Greece, the Emirates, and Saudi Arabia, Jordan. So I think that we were the common player in both maneuvers, and it was about securing the Mediterranean region. So I think that the message is clear to all our neighbors that we are maintaining peace, and we are the point that should be taken in consideration in all calculation for the future of the Middle East.
Right. Dr. Huda, several months back, the presidency held a conference entitled The Story of a Nation. So in light of all what's taking place and what we're passing through here in Egypt, can we say it's a story of success?
Well, it's a story of, continuous attempts and working hard to achieve, as you have just said, success. Because the word success is a bit vague to me. I mean, success in what? Doing what? And I think we are still working, and this is, well, still working and still trying to develop and trying to achieve. Every time you are trying to achieve something more and more, I think this is the success. It's not the end target as much as the experience and the steps you are, and what you are, the endeavor really you are doing. This is the most important, and I think we are on the track, if you want, on the right track. That's the most important. Whether we're going to achieve, we are going to definitely achieve success, or the success we want actually for our country.
Right. Dr. Cherif, in light of the President's strategic advances, how do you view the future of Egypt's foreign relations?
Egypt's foreign relations is on the right track. We have seen that the whole Middle East is going through difficult, I don't know, calculations. Many superpowers now are being destabilized in a way or another. We have seen lately the problems with Saudi Arabia and the murder of journalist Khashoggi. We have seen that the West has changed the tone with their familiar and close ally, which is Saudi Arabia. They had the same problem with Turkey, with Erdogan. So I think that the usual powers in the Middle East now are, let's not say shaking, but they have problems, real problems with the outside world. Iran is facing very difficult problems in its internal affairs with the economic uprisings now and then from the people there. So I think that the whole Middle East now is witnessing a new shape. I think that we are still the country who is heading on the right track. We had the right bet. We have said it before that we will take this track. It's not easy, but let's do it. And I think that we are showing the world that we have made the right choice at the right time.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you very much for coming today, Dr. Cherif Amir, Professor of International Relations, and Dr. Huda Awad, Professor of Political Science. Many thanks for being with us today, and it's always a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is wrap up this edition of To The Point. Don't forget to join us next week, same time. Till then, it's goodbye.